Hey everybody, Morning C3. It's good to be here. Thanks for joining us and thanks for being a part of this place. Thanks for joining us online week after week. Thanks for supporting us, for um, helping this place survive and thrive during this like strange and weird time. At least in my view, I think it really matters. Not only our community, but communities like this that are committed to a kind of ongoing conversation about meaning and values and truth and beauty and goodness and right living, um, and to join in that conversation from a spiritual point of view, from a scientific point of view, um, inhabiting the place that we're inhabiting in the 21st century. And I think now more than ever, that's the way it strikes me. And a couple weeks ago, I started a new series that I intend to last for the next year, which I'm really excited about. I'm calling it Meaning Matters. And each month, I just want to hover around a single word. Meaning matters, and then hover around a single word that I think is important to be talking about and to be thinking about and to be cultivating and to have a relationship with. And this month of October, is the word wonder. And actually, my initial question, at least if I remember correctly from a couple weeks ago, is what kinds of things evoke that sense of wonder? What kinds of things do you already know evoke that sense of awe or wonder? And maybe even like behind that, a little curiosity. And at least for me, this time of year, at least in terms of the four seasons, tugs on some of those strings. And I don't know. I mean, it's the relaxing of the earth into its winter time that feels kind of amazing. It's like courting the life-death life cycle and the way in which the natural world just says yes to the turning of the seasons. God, I wish I could be more like that. It's almost ironic that the election falls during the time of year when everything is meant to be relaxing and softening and letting go of the full bloodedness of summer. Instead, everybody's like freaking out, and clinging and grasping and shouting and raging and finger pointing. And have you ever seen Dumb and Dumber? A classic film. But anyway, Jim Carrey's in the front seat of their van, and his friend is yelling at him, and he's just going la 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 la. That's what it feels like right now. That's what it feels like the media is doing, and in its individual pockets of ideological possession, and our political camps with their own ideological possession, just plugging their ears to anything and anyone that doesn't confirm their bias already. How do we get here? How do we get here? Meanwhile, the earth goes on. Meanwhile, the seasons relax. Meanwhile, I guess I'm thinking of Mary Oliver right now. Meanwhile, high in the clear blue air, the geese are turning home again, something like that. Announcing your place in the family of things, she says. That's the capacity to wonder. Sort of, and I'm not saying block out everything, although sometimes I'm saying block out everything. Or the noise at least. I'm not saying go la la la. I'm saying, what does it look like to soften? I guess that's the question I'm asking. What does it look like to soften into the rhythm that is always with us? The rhythm of being human in the natural world. After all, we are the natural world as much as the trees that are releasing their leaves right now. So that's what I'm I intend to talk about today. So I want to do two things right now. I want to read a poem. I want to read a poem by John O'Donohue, and I'll probably read the whole thing without much commentary. Maybe I'll go back and pick up on a few pieces here or there. Irish poet. My wife sent me this poem the other day, and it's been working me and turning over in my sort of heart and mind. And then I want to talk just a little bit about the story of Parcel, or the Holy Grail, or the Fisher King. I don't want to tell the whole myth or story. It's something I'm working on. I may do a couple podcasts on the Fisher King. It's just an interest of mine that's been tugging on me a bit. And anyway, I just want to talk a tiny bit about that story, because I think there's something about it that is directly related to the capacity to wonder, which is a deep human capacity. And maybe I ought to say here at the beginning something I got from Abraham Heschel. He says that the beginning of religion is awe, or the beginning of religion is wonder. And I think he means religion not in the negative way it's used often today, where people think about rigid dogma and sort of institutional gatekeepers and things like that. But I think he means it in the existential sense, in terms of orientation toward meaning. Religion as orientation toward meaning, like the compass of your life is oriented toward meaning. And just by that definition, I would say I'm very religious. The compass of my life, the compass of my soul even, is oriented toward meaning, and I want to follow that path, which means on the one hand, I'm deeply religious, and the beginning of that, he says, is the capacity to wonder, which is an innate capacity. It's a deep capacity. You see it in a 3-year-old when they encounter something magnificent in the natural world, like a grasshopper or a snake or an ocean wave, which is the same thing as saying when they discover everything has this capacity, and to evoke or resonate with our own inner capacity for wonder. And we lose that over time. Maybe we regain, if you make it to elderhood, you regain it. That's the classic pattern, from childlike curiosity to childlike curiosity. And somewhere in midlife, if you don't start recovering that, you're in serious trouble. You become the archetype of the bitter, close-minded, angry and resentful sort of old person. and yet this deep capacity to wonder rests just beneath the surface all the time. And just about anything, or I might even say stronger, anything with heart, eyes, and consciousness open can awaken that. Even, I might say, though I don't want to go into much detail, even suffering, I hate to say it, but even suffering can evoke the capacity, our needed capacity to wonder at the mystery of life itself. How did any of us get here? Even the journey of evolution, your personal ancestry. How did any of us get here? It's amazing. Wars and famines and chance and opportunity and famines and storms and the chance meeting of a stranger, which is the love story of your great grandmother and grandfather. I mean, what a mystery. And to bump into the fragility of life, like what I meant with suffering, awakens that capacity to wonder. Now, sometimes it can do the opposite, and we become overwhelmed with fear and a scarcity mindset. So the other thing I want to say right here at the beginning, I will get to my poem, or the John O'Donohue poem, is we need wonder. And I just don't know how to say it other than to say it that directly. We need to reawaken this capacity to wonder, especially in an election year. And one more thing about religion. I think right now, in the absence of religious devotion, we have politics. And I don't mean that religion is necessarily going away in America. I don't know. I think it's changing massively, I would say. But in terms of real religious devotion, like in terms of commitment to one's tribe, is waning a bit. You know, when I was a kid, we thought Baptists were the only real Christians. You know, and later on, I met Calvinists. I didn't even know what a Calvinist was, or never even heard of the CRC, the Christian Reformed Church, until I moved to Michigan. And I realized, oh, they think they're the only ones. They're the true Christians. So it's just funny, but that seems to be changing. That kind of devotion to such a specific tribal expression of one's religion. And part of that is just the postmodern pluralistic world that it's having an effect on people. And so on the one hand, that's good. On the other hand, fervor and devotion seems to be going toward politics. And I don't know why, but it's like there's something like almost religious zealotry right now. And how do we know that? Because the other side is considered to be evil, wrong, bigoted, small-minded, and actually dangerous. And if they were eliminated from the scene, the world would be safer and better and more righteous. And I say, there it is. There it is. There's that religious zeal finding its way into the political sphere. So how do you want to live? How do you want to live? The political conversation is one conversation, and an important one. I don't want to minimize that. It's important. But it's one conversation. And how do you want to carry yourself in the world right now? And how connected are you to the mystery of being itself? How connected are you to the mystery of the other, any other? Right now I'm making this talk on my porch, and I see squirrels, and I see a red-headed woodpecker on the black walnut tree right next to a massive lightning strike. You know, the kind of thing that could just kill me in 0.001 second. How close do you want to live to the mystery of life itself and the mystery of the others, any others? I've said this before. I think it's such a lovely phrase, but Carl Jung once said that don't forget the person sitting in front of you. This is advice to analysts. The person sitting in front of you is not a statistic. God, what a line. Your neighbor is not a statistic. Your neighbor is not a poll, a poll number. Your neighbor is not, cannot be pigeonholed into some sort of statistical model. Your neighbor is a mystery. The other is a mystery. So just a reminder, just a reminder. So I want to read a poem because I keep hearing from people and from friends and acquaintances that they're tired right now. They're tired of, I think probably the cultural climate, and they're tired of the virus and talking about the virus and worrying about the virus. And so here's a poem by John O'Donoghue. For one who is exhausted, a blessing. For one who is exhausted, a blessing. When the rhythm of the heart becomes hectic, time takes on the strain until it breaks. Then all the unattended stress falls in on the mind like an endless increasing weight. The light in the mind becomes dim. Things you could take in your stride before now become laborsome events of will. Weariness invades the spirit. Gravity begins falling inside you. Gravity begins falling inside you, dragging down every bone. The tide you never valued has gone out, and you are marooned on unsure ground. Something within you has closed down, and you cannot push yourself back to life. You have been forced to enter empty time. You have been forced to enter empty time. The desire that drove you has relinquished. There is nothing else to do now but rest and patiently learn to receive the self you have forsaken in the race of days. At first, your thinking will darken, and sadness take over like listless weather. The flow of unwept tears will frighten you. You have traveled too fast over false ground. Now your soul has come to take you back. You have traveled too fast over false ground. Now your soul has come to take you back. Take refuge in your senses. Open up to all the small miracles you rushed through. Become inclined to watch the way of rain when it falls slow and free. Imitate the habit of twilight, taking time to open the well of color that fostered the brightness of day. Stay clear of those vexed in spirit. Stay clear of those vexed in spirit. Learn to linger around someone of ease who feels they have all the time in the world. Gradually, you will return to yourself, having learned a new respect for your heart and the joy that dwells far within slow time. What a description of the cultural mood right now. Vexed in spirit, a heavy weight. And what an invitation to soften and to open up your senses. What does the fall smell like? How many different shades of yellow can you identify in the elm? What does the air feel like on your skin or as it passes through your nose? What does that crisp frost morning feel like on the very tip of your nose and as it enters your lungs? What's that feel like? This is to return to the five senses, to return home, the only home we have, the only home we carry around with us, the home of our bodies. And I especially love the advice here about stay clear of those vexed in spirit. And it makes me laugh a little because the 24-hour news cycle might as well be called vexed in spirit. And I don't really know what the solution is in terms of being an aware person and an engaged person in the conversations of culture, and an engaged and aware and alert person in the conversations of mystery and spirit and nature and earth and common humanity. But he seems to be pointing out something, that the vexed spirit here is like a black hole, a vortex that keeps this heavy weight on us. And I want to read this line again. Learn to linger around someone of ease who feels they have all the time in the world. Do you know anyone like this? Who sits down comfortably in a chair, who pours a glass of tea as if they have all the time in the world. And we need these people. We need to hang out with these kinds of people who have a larger sense of time and meaning and purpose, who have the capacity to wonder at the smallness and ordinariness of life itself. And I think there's a direct connection between the capacity to ease into life and the capacity to wonder. It's not to say there aren't things to worry about or things that are dangerous, but the other word for that is just life. Life is full of perils and dangers and complexities. And that's the way it is. So maybe you feel like you'd like to gradually return to yourself. That's a line that hooks me. Yeah. Like when you get hooked by something on Facebook or Twitter or CNN or Fox News or one more piece of information, one more statistic that's different than the statistics that you just read, an hour ago. You can lose yourself, you lose your way. It's like, where am I in all of this? So maybe you'd like to gradually return to yourself, having learned new respect for your heart, he says. So that's the poem by John O'Donohue, For One Who Has Exhausted a Blessing. Google it, it'll come right up. I'm using the version On Being, Krista Tippett's On Being. There's a whole series of poems on there, but check it out. The next thing I want to talk about, kind of just in closing here, is something in the Parcel story, the Fisher King, the quest for the Grail. It's hard to say the quest for the Grail without thinking of Monty Python. That was my first introduction to the Grail mythology, was Monty Python. And I'm glad about that, by the way. So in the story of the Grail, Parcel, whose name means something like fool, simpleton, he's the sacred fool character in the story. And one day he's out, he lives with his mother, his father's dead, he's a knight, he lives with his mother, and he's out and he bumps into some knights, and he's never seen anything so magnificent in his entire life. And he makes a kind of vow to himself that he's going to become a knight, or find these knights again, or follow them, or something like that. And his mom says, grieves and wails and cries as any good enough mother will do, and gives him some advice. Says, okay, go, if you're gonna go, wear this undergarment I'm going to weave you. That's a whole nother piece, which I won't have time to go into. I just think it's very funny and interesting. Okay, you can go into the world, but wear the underwear that I made for you. Very interesting. And then she says, no, and don't ask many questions, which is very interesting advice. So Parcel sets off, and eventually, almost right away in the story, he stumbles into the Grail castle. And there's the Fisher King. And he's called the Fisher King because he has a wound that goes right through through both of his hips. And it's festering. And he's right on the edge of life and death. He doesn't want to live and he can't die. And he's dying, but still part of him wants to live. And because of his illness, it affects the whole kingdom. And this, by the way, is a symbol. One way of reading this is what happens to tradition and culture over time. It clings to something, and the possibility for real death and resurrection is resisted. So it's like sitting there festering, having half a kingdom. Might remind you of the present state of affairs in the US of A right now, the political situation, clinging tightly to an ideology, but really just hovering on the edge of this life-death cycle. So the story is saying something like the Fisher King, the Grail King, needs to be healed. And there's a secret, a legend that one day someone will enter into the hall of the Grail, the castle, and ask the right kind of questions which will heal the Fisher King. He's called the Fisher King because the only way he alleviates his pain is to fish. And fishing and water is often a symbol for the unconscious in ancient myths and stories. So he gets some relief by hovering above the unconscious and tasting and searching for the depths of things. That's the image of fishing. So the next part of the story is intriguing. So Parcel enters the Grail Castle, and right away he's shown the mysteries and wonders. He sees the Grail. He sees the lance that has blood on the tip of it that's still dripping. He sees the sword. He sees the table. And people begin to feast on the Grail. And when dining on the Grail, it's like a cornucopia. It's like a bottomless spilling out of goodness while the Grail is in the castle. And maybe this is the vitality of life, the wonder of life, the profoundness of life, the meaning of life in its fullness, spilling out. This is the creation of the world again, if you will. And they're very happy to have Parcel in the Grail Castle because they think maybe he's the one that's going to ask the question. But he remembers that his mother tells him, don't ask too many questions, so he doesn't. And he gets kicked out of the castle, and he has to start the whole journey again. And the whole rest of the Fisher King, the whole rest of the Parcel story is a painful and ongoing quest to return once again to the castle. Now, the question Parcel is meant to ask, which he eventually learns, is whom does the Grail serve? Or who does the Grail serve? Or what does the Grail serve? In other words, it's not a question of how can I find the Grail and possess the Grail and like my own spiritual and private salvation, but who does it serve? What does it serve? That's that turn in life from narcissistic self-service to is it possible to live in a world that serves the community, the whole, that serves nature, that serves the largest vision I can dream up, including more and more people? But that has to awaken within. Now, here's my point today. If you don't ask any questions, you're not on the real journey. And the very ground of the question asker is wonder itself. It's not that I need information, give me information, like I'm going to type it into Wikipedia and get a quick answer. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the awakening of the deep questions. What is really meaningful? What really matters? Who really matters? What kinds of practices and ways of being really matter? That's to engage in questions. And you can hear it in the word. That's to engage in the quest itself. To engage in the quest is to engage in questions. and to orient your life around a kind of openness, a kind of wonder. What do I not know? What do I not know about my neighbor? What do I not know about life? What do I not know about nature? What do I not know about the cosmos? What do I not know about time? What do I not know about quantum physics? What do I not know about um, morality and ethics? What do I not know about the past? What do I not know about history? Do you see? That's a kind of wondering. And it's so interesting to me that that is required for maturity. That's what the Holy Grail story is saying. If you don't quest, if you don't question, you will never mature. You'll end up like the Fisher King, festering, locked in a regret. Remember the old days. If we could just go back to the old days. And those days are gone. And yet, remaining locked into that doesn't open up the possibility of some kind of renewing of culture and nature, which is what the ultimate story is about in terms of the Grail. So that's maybe where I want to leave things today. What kind of questions are you asking? What kind of questing are you presently doing? And is it possible to soften your heart in those questions? No, really, what do I not know? Really? What do I have to learn? What do all of us have to learn? Because if you and I don't have that posture, and our neighbors don't have that posture, the trials that we're undergoing as a culture, as a civilization, as a global community, it's like the possibility for growth evaporates. All we can do is take some responsibility individually, interpersonally, with our family, with our friends, with our community here at C3, to stay committed to the quest, and stay committed to cultivating our own capacity for wonder. So I want to wish you a quest in the next couple weeks as we approach the election and Thanksgiving, and the turning of the seasons, and may you find the most surprising places of wonder. Peace.